some notes here. First off, I just want to give a huge thank you to Rose and Daria. Come on. One more time. Come on, you guys. I want to give you a big shout out. Also, Eva, Ryan, and the library crew for sure. So I just want to give those shout outs. My favorite Creative Mornings, when I've watched them, have been a little bit personal, a little skill building, and some storytelling. So, everyone's got their own perspective of where punk started, right? I mean, come on. So I wanted to do my perspective. Of course, I particularly think it started in the early to mid-'60s in Tacoma with the band called the Sonics, which is kind of regional. They also had a female counterpart on the other side of the country in Detroit called Pleasure Seekers, and their song What a Way to Die. So again, I pretty much think it started in the 60s, and then it goes to the Stooges, New York Dolls, Punk Magazine, of course. I think a lot of people think that's where it gets its name, 75, 76. Ramones, come on. You guys, come on. And then the Sex Pistols, which I always think, right. But people kind of, I think, put that as like where punk started. It's like, bro, no, like a whole century or a decade and a half before that it was happening. And then a couple other favorites, Buzzcocks and X-Ray Specs. So again, I think, just like jazz music, is it Ella Fitzgerald and Herbie Hancock, or is it Antonio Carlos Jobim? It's just a little bit of everything. So this is my perspective of how I got introduced to punk. So, okay. Hey, Papa was a Rolling Stone. I just wanted to kind of highlight the biggest punk in my life, which was my dad, George Birge. He was a really good guy. You can't see it in this picture, but the other picture in this series is him putting out his hands, touching the top of his plants in our garden, if you know what I mean. So anyways, George is a good guy. And he really helped me, I think, have some punk ideals pretty early on, which was a union guy. He was about inclusion. He was, just a really cool kind of like, back in the 80s, guys, I know for some of you youngsters it's hard to believe, but like truck drivers had a real like stranglehold on like the cultural touch points with like Smokey and the Bandit and Convoy. So I kind of looked up to my dad for being a truck driver as well. So anyways, yeah, so that was my dad. And then, oh gosh, you guys, what happened between 7th and 8th grade? Something happened in there, guys. And that was the punk rock. So, I kind of gave away my kind of pink lip gloss for my black eyeliner. And I'll tell you right now, that tail was enviable. You can't quite see it on the side there, but I had, between that, I had an asymmetrical haircut, which is like short on one side and long on the other. But when you got it all cut short, you got a banging tail, guys. So I was the envy of junior high for sure with that tail. Okay. Punks at Prom, just another highlight of, I just had to point out my outfit, guys, okay, very 90s, I graduated in 91, the double creeper shoes, the cutoff, that's very 90s, the cutoff jeans, and that shirt was a pajama top from the Thrift Mart, I still have it, which is like kind of that rayon 1940s style, and then a leather jacket, so again, we look pretty, chill, we look like we're being too cool, that's kind of the deal, so Punks at Prom. And then the next picture, Iron Fist, Heart of Gold. I feel like I definitely, I think part of it was having the agency, because I grew up across the street from Playfair Racecourse right here on East Sprague. And so if I was gonna have to wear thrift clothes, I was gonna do it on purpose. Mm-hmm. And also because I was a bit bigger person, I feel like especially in high school, I was the defender of the weirdos and the geeks and the queer kids and the nerds. And so, I feel like I used my, power for good, for helping other people, especially not get bullied in high school. So, that was my punk rock teenage years. So, okay. And as part of that, of course, is, Spokane is geographically located in a pretty interesting area in the sense that, especially, before the internet and before computers, yes, that was a thing, especially you young people. That wasn't too long ago, okay, you guys, it really wasn't. And so bands, we would hear about them like in music magazines and stuff like that. There was really no internet to log on to. And because we were like, coming from, I guess, the east to the west, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, it's a lot of long stretches there. And I think bigger bands kind of showed up in our town, mainly because of where we were geographically located. And then, of course, they would stop here before they go to like Seattle or Portland or wherever else on their way. And because of that, I think we got a lot bigger bands than our city really kind of should have had, maybe is a way to put it. Black Flag, No Means No, Mr. T Experience, Fugazi, The Offspring, Guar, that Guar show, 1 to 3 Arts, guys. That was something to remember. And yes, Green Day here at Red Band Park in 1990, which there's about 50, 60, probably the size of this group at Green Day. Then it was Glover Field, but now of course it's Red Band Park. So I think we got to see a lot bigger bands come through here and kind of bolster our punk aesthetics and our punk sensibilities a little bit. So and of course another Gilman Street band, which was Comet Bus. You see on the left there, Aaron Comet Bus. That was pretty prolific with his not only music journalism, but his punk memoir that he's done, which I'm sure most of you have checked it out, but you haven't, please do. And then Maximum Rock and Roll, of course, again, that was one of those magazines where you could not only learn about bands, they have interviews, but also where they come into your town, how to literally get online before the internet and like write for records and things to be sent to your home. Which I know you're like, what do you keep talking about the internet? It was not very long ago. It was like 30 years ago, guys, I swear. So again, talking about punk aesthetic, punk zines, things like that. And of course, Spokane had to get on that, right? So this was 1989, we put together that magazine. And then you kind of see, maybe it's kind of hard to see on this right side, but Pollyanne's 15, which, I'm looking at it now. Number 1, James Brown, yes, Godfather Soul. The Mummies, Pleasure Seekers, the Sonics, I mentioned those guys earlier. Black Sabbath, come on, guys, they're punk. And then guess for the Haymakers. There's a band in town called the Makers, so this predates when they changed their name, the Haymakers. And then some local bands, Suction Goat, of course, from our beloved Garbage Goat over there, that was their name. And the Fumes, and another band called the Mother. So again, we tried our hand at the zine thing thinking, okay, well, this is definitely a place where young people, well, old people, whoever, can have independent journalism at their hands, and so this was our kind of answer to that. If you want to. So then I moved to Portland. Love Spokane. I'm a Spokaneite, born and bred, like I said, over by the, if you don't know, Altamont and Sprague, pretty much are two of the closest streets over there. And so when I went to Portland, I started getting involved with the Independent Publishing Resource Center, which is similar to, Mel, what you were talking about, you were talking about the book arts. Somebody mentioned the Spokane Print and Publishing, but they have both a letterpress studio, a silkscreening studio, zine making, you kind of see what all the things they do on the left-hand side there. This is a picture of the internal system here. They also had a computer lab as well. You see people making some zines. And then the next one. This is the largest physical U.S. public zine library, or at least it was like in the late 2010s. And again, we had people doing somewhat library skills too, because they were setting up and documenting all these different zines that were coming, and people were donating. There were some purchases. And then the zine machine, which again is how do we get these kind of smaller independent publications in the hands of people with $1.04. So don't smoke, kids, get your zines right here. And so I was at the IPRC for a long time. I was there on their board. And also in my professional work, I was doing some work with a guy named Sam Adams. He was a city councilor at that point. He was the chief of staff for a mayor who'd been in office in Portland for several years. So he had a lot of understanding under his belt, and he was really ready to go with centering the arts, not only as the right thing to do, a good thing to do, but as an economic driver. So when he kind of see down at the bottom here, this was his inaugural party at City Hall, which was super fun for me. We had March 4th marching band, which is a big kind of one of those like black rock, what's the Burning Man, big tall stilts and all these crazy people doing that right in the middle of City Hall, which was really fun. And when we were in his office, we thought, again, Portland's in this interesting time period, especially culturally. So we're going to do some things to make sure that both young people have arts in school and also artists are getting paid, and it's a profession. So you kind of see at the bottom here, we did a town hall meeting, and there was a 50C4, not to get too far into the weeds, but 50C4s can lobby. And so we created a 50C4 called the Creative Advocacy Network. They did a lot of different town hall meetings. In parallel to that, on the right-hand side, we did the Act for Art, the Creative Action Plan for Portland Metropolitan Region, which again is working with different folks in different regions in Portland, all kind of leveling up to say, we've cut arts out of school for so long, this is a pocket of money that we're gonna collect from everybody, $35 every year, and it's gonna go towards money's going to pay for teachers in schools as well as other funding for different nonprofits. So again, it was a real heavy lift. It was in 2008, and again, the economy was terrible, but this guy Sam really pushed through and did it. And he made a big splash because out of all people discrediting and criticizing the effort, it won. And so now Portland has an arts tax. Again, I don't know if Mayor Brown is here. I'm not saying we should do that at the moment, maybe later on. But it worked in Portland for sure. So, and again, so we were doing hard-hitting policy work, trying to change the game that way. And we were also doing really fun stuff, irreverent stuff, like we did a PDX Pop Now, which is an annual event that happens every year. I think it's probably 16 years old. And so one of the years we had, because it's shows all over the city of Portland in different venues and whatnot, usually kind of emerging, sometimes younger folks, and then also pretty established folks. This was in 2009, okay, 2009. And this was right at the portico of City Hall. So again, we are clearing out an area and putting a stage and having music right at City Hall. So all the public officials can hear it all day long. Okay, so next one. And then also we're doing other kind of irreverent stuff like April we proclaimed Comic Book Month, which was pretty cool. And so again, because I can't keep busy enough, right guys? I'm sure you're all the same. So besides doing professional work at the city of Portland, I was also part of this thing called the Dill Pickle Club. And we did a couple of different fundraisers where we actually had restaurants, like hipster restaurants, make pickles at the beginning, like I guess it would be in fall, and then in spring we had a party where we'd have people test it, and so it was pretty fun. And then also like, how is the city planned? So we're working with city people to talk about kind of like, how do things work? Why should I know? Why should I care? It's technical, surely, but it's not insurmountable. And then here's some other stuff we do, the history of Portland music. We did a series of zines and comics. There you go, history, the Black Panther in Portland, which is a cool one. And then we had to change our name quite literally because, oh man, pickles started getting their own life of their own. Like everyone knew about pickles and loved pickles. And the name, the Dill Pickle Club, was because there's a Chicago group like in the 20s or 30s that were these like kind of radical anarchists that were doing really cool stuff like labor unions. Like, that's a hard thing to explain to someone and be like, okay, they're like, where do you get the pickling salts from? We're like, bro, like we're not that kind of pickle club. So anyways, we changed the name to Know Your City. And that also had its problems because it was so kind of blah that people were like, no, you put Know Your City into the Google search, guys, forget about it. There's so many Know Your City things, so I don't know. I think we went too far. You can tell I'm still bitter about it. We went too far, but definitely the zines and the comics were super cool. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about a person named Chloe Daly. She is an amazing human. She also ran a bookstore called Reading Frenzy for, 20-something years, 20 years. You kind of see some pictures of people looking at zines, her shelf, and then this is a collaboration she did called Crap Hound with Sean Chechirachi, which is just books and books of free club art that you can make zines and cool stuff with. So they've done ones that are like, this one's like a clown one. They've done ones about like knives and scissors, and so they always have a theme. But she's important both for kind of the culture of zines and print work, especially in Portland, but also because she ran for city council. Alden? Thank you so much. You kind of see her materials look very vibey, very hipster, right? She's an old school punk and also owns a bookstore. That's super cool. And then she was endorsed by Bernie. Oh, Bernie. So she was kind of in the mix there for a little while. And then her main piece for running was a comic book illustrated by Joe Sacco about the rental crisis. And I think that was a smart thing because it wasn't just your typical carefully curated group of people behind somebody with their thumb up, like, hey, no, we understand, we've interviewed people, we know what the rental crisis is, we know what's happening in Portland, we know that certain people are being more impacted than others. So I think that was a big part of, and she put it like, I think it was 10,000. The zine we did was only 3,000 our first run. She did 10,000 across the streets of Portland. So that's Chloe. So back at City Hall, I was asked to come. I volunteered for her campaign. Go ahead, Alden. And I came back to City Hall, and we're doing the same stuff again, guys. We are doing. When I worked for Sam, I should have said this. We used City Hall as a venue to do monthly art shows, and it was a lot of, again, those unsung heroes. We love the watercolors of the Oregon coast. That's great, beautiful. But also there's a lot of other stuff that happens besides the watercolors of the Oregon coast. So we're doing comic books event in City Hall. You can kind of tell Portland has a really pretty City Hall. Ours in Spokane is cool too, but theirs is really nice. And so we're saying that's the 10-year anniversary of when it was proclaimed. This is right before COVID, guys. You see people doing their fun stuff. And then kind of the piece de resistance, I think for me, being at City Hall, either before with Sam or with Chloe, was Dead Moon Night. So there's a band, Dead Moon. It's one of those things where it's like, what's his face? The guy from Baywatch, what's his name? Hasselhoff. He's really popular in Germany. Well, it's true because these guys are like a seminal punk band. They're from Clackamas, Oregon, which is really close to Portland. And they've been around for a long time. And so we wanted to do something, again, something very formal for something that's quite informal. So we did, next slide here. So this was a show that we did. And this is the proclamation that we did, proclaiming Dead Moon, not day, but Dead Moon Night, because that's one of their songs. And then this is Fred and Tootie Cole here in the picture. And little did we know, so what happened was we brought out folks from all over the world to come and play their songs back to them, because Fred, the guy on the left there, was quite ill and we didn't really know how ill he really was, and so he wasn't up to playing his own music, but other people played for him. His kids, other band people came and did it. And then about 2 weeks later, he passed on, but like right before he passed on, he's like, that was my swan song, to be able to like be at City Hall and do all that. So rock and roll, Fred and Tootie Cole, Dead Moon Night. Okay, so thank you guys. They appreciate that. So again, using City Hall as a rock and roll venue. Next slide. And then as part of that too, we got back to this idea of Chimney Christmas. I work for the city, and again, I'm not here officially with the city. I should probably say that because I don't know if I get in trouble or not. But when we were in Portland, we get a lot of questions. Hey, how does this stuff work? What are the acronyms? What are the different departments? Who's in charge? What is city council? Are you being purposely confusing because you don't want us to participate? Like, no, we're just not great at telling our story. So we started the zine in Portland, which is kind of, you've got one at your table here in a second, but it was just more generally, here's how voting was, even though this county thing, it was nonpartisan, of course. And then also, like, the middle part is, what does your city council look like? What does it look like if you're testifying in front of city council? Just trying to give people tools to figure out, like, there's some layers to it, but it's not insurmountable. So, next slide. That was the first zine. The second zine, we got approached from a department, the planning department from Portland, and they have this really interesting and very important report called the Historical Context of Racist Planning in Portland. And so most people aren't going to pick up this very lengthy 400-page report, but they'll pick up a zine of a story about Cleo and Kayan Davis, who this actually happened to their grandparents, where it was redlined, it was blighted, and there's some, empirical documentation saying that his family got really railed in some of these bad practices. So again, and the Dream Rezoned also has a pretty good story at the end where Albina Foundation is actually helping kind of do some reclamation projects in that area. But okay, so that's the second zine, and so then Pollyanne, after 27 years in Portland, moves back to Spokane. Woo! So I'm so glad to be here, you guys. I love Spokane so much. People ask me, do you miss Portland? And I'm like, I miss sometimes the cooler weather in the summer. Yeah. That was hard. It's pretty dry here. I miss some of the people, but not really. I love Portland, but it got real saturated, and because developers came into town, and those kind of soft elbows got kind of sharp. And I am not a big fan of the show Portlandia. It's a terrible program. But so I came back to Spokane. And Spokane, love it or hate it, it reminds me a lot of when I was in Portland 30 years ago, guys. It's a cool stuff happening, so let's keep it that way. Let's keep let's keep Spokane kind of gross, right? Yeah. That's our tagline, right? Let's keep it a little bit gross, okay? That's what we really, really do. So now we are to where we are now, which is all this zine, all this punk rock stuff that I've been thinking about and doing for the last several decades, with lots of help from a lot of folks. It's at your table. You might have already seen it before, but again, those same kind of questions came up here is how do we learn more, especially now just more general in the context of the federal context. I think people really want to know, what are these things? What are these different offices? Who should we be paying attention to? What's going on? So we did one about the city of Spokane. Thank you. I can't remember if I have another slide or not. Is that it? I think that's it. Okay, great, perfect. So thanks so much. I just want to make one little note too, is that if you're interested in Spokane punk rock, there's a project kind of bubbling up with Anna Harbine at the Jolie Ferris Archives and the library potentially. And we're going to be doing a kind of history of Spokane punk here, hopefully 2027 or something like that. So just as something to plant in your heads if you want to get involved. So thanks a lot, you guys. Appreciate you.